pretty sure we're recording.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to take a break, but I might check halfway through our recording if we're recording.
Yeah,
So
no
if it
problem.
seems like I'm not engaged in the conversation, it's because I'm checking if we're actually recording.
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
Jeez. Wish this was easier to do on my phone.
Do you have an Android or is it a iPod?
I'm just using an Android phone.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
if I could figure out how to do this all on an iPad, that would be fucking amazing. Because that would make this really easy. But it doesn't work like that. Okay. All right. You are listening to. Let me. I just want to pull that up. Just so I can okay, I'm gonna intro this just the same, and then, but I've already got this part already recorded, but whatever. All right, you are listening to Alternating with Erik21 Part 2 of our review of Rose of Versailles. Erik, how you doing?
I've been doing great. Had a decent week this week. Really tried to push myself to watch the remainder of these episodes. Usually to finish a show, it does take me about even half a show would take me a few weeks. Um, but I really had to push myself to finish all of these. And yeah, I don't actually regret doing it. This was a fantastic second half to watch. Definitely better than the first half, and was really great. But other things I've been doing, I just mostly been playing my games. The Steam Summer Sale is here, so there you go. I am buying more stuff. No, I'm just kidding. I'm buying stuff off my wish list, which includes just a few indie games and some DLCs for existing games, which I do need because the DLCs make the games more fun. Other couple of things I've done was I bought myself a new set of shelves, which means I took quite a lot of almost all of my books out and placed them in a shelf. And if Connor ever comes to visit, then he can see it's not that bad.
Mm.
Okay? And the other thing is I'm getting myself a new Lazy Boy armchair. Well, not new secondhand one, but it'll be better than the chair I have now. So that's what's been happening. And yeah, that's pretty much been me. Haven't managed to really watch or read anything else other than going through Rose of Versailles because what a bloody roller coaster this was. And what about you, Connor? How's your week been?
So I got lots. It's funny, I wasn't working this week, but man, I've
Mm,
still got like, it was still. I've seen this show before, and I didn't hate it the first time I watched it. It was just still kind of. It's a good show to watch, but it's not a show I think you binge watch. Would you agree with me on that? Like, it's not one you just binge all in one day.
mm,
I mean,
yeah.
like
I
the
don't
whole
think it's
thing.
something.
Like
I
chunks
mean,
I could
yeah,
see.
yeah. I don't think I would binge watch this show
Yeah.
in one go. Mostly because you do have to take some time to understand what's actually going on,
Mm,
and
mm,
even more so when it's in consideration of the French Revolution,
yeah.
because if you think there was quite a bit of information in the first half, the second half kind of
Yeah.
provides yeah, it definitely provides a much greater narrative to um, yeah, the whole
Mm.
French what is it, conflict between the
I
aristocrats and the
yeah.
people
I
and
think
all
as
that.
well it needs to be said, and people who review stuff will understand this. when you just watch something passively, like just as you're a fan of it, it's a bit different from when you have to critically review something. You have to watch it and take notes and focus on different
Mm,
things, you know.
mm.
So
I mean, for
it's
the sake of our review, I've only noted down only very few things during per episode. I know there's a whole lot to
okay.
really speak about.
I've got so much notes, man.
Oh, I just kept it short since there's two of us, and I think we'll mostly be arguing about one or two things over time. But
Okay.
I've personally kept it as short as possible so that we don't drag on too much.
Mm,
Um, I mean, that's not to say I did it with, you know, willingly. I really wanted to put down as much as I can. I wanted to,
mm.
discuss much more about some of these massive events that have occurred, like the what is it, like the pre what is it, like the
Bastille
precursor,
and
like the
things like
different,
that.
yeah, the siege of Bastille, the precursor to the revolution,
Mm.
the affair of the necklace, even what is it, even Marie Antoinette's death, which was. I know you told me not to watch episode 40 because it's an epilogue,
Yeah, I watched it
but
again and then realized it
yeah,
wasn't as much of an epilogue as I thought.
it's really sugar coated.
Yeah,
When we get to it, I'll explain
yeah.
why. I've actually read and listened to a podcast about what's actually more or less what happened to Marie Antoinette,
Okay.
at the end of her reign.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
yeah, were we gonna get into it or?
Well, we're gonna start as we usually do. I was gonna say what I was doing my week, but yeah, no, that's fine. What we just did.
That's
No,
right.
that's
We
fine.
kind of I felt like we just kind of
Eric's
ran into
Eric's
it.
totally game this week. He just wants to get into it.
Oh
Okay.
well, this is just fun.
We're gonna have to give some people who, I mean, you should listen to part one. I'm gonna say that if you haven't listened to part one. A brief. I'm just gonna do this even before I get into what I've been doing this week. Just because Eric's talked about it already. I'm just gonna give you guys a brief plot sort of synopsis of this show. There's a character named Oscar. She's a fictional character. May or may have not been based off a real person.
Apparently it
And
was.
basically, it's about Marie Antoinette's rise and downfall, and that's the gist of what you basically need to know getting into part one. Part two is just taking from what's going on. We'll get into it when we get into it, but that's all you need to know if you know. That's the gist of the main plot of this. And I actually put in our last podcast, because I don't think we spoiled anything in the pros and cons. So I did put that if you guys want to listen to a spoiler-free review, there's a marker in there. I put the exact point where we talk about the pros and cons,
Mm.
because I think we don't spoil anything at that point. At least I remember when I was listening back to it. We might, we're probably just gonna spoil the heck out of this, even in the pros and cons, I think, as well. So yeah. But my week, um, so I handle all the Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and what else are we on? YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, technically Twitter as well. But I I have posted episodes up there, and I had one follower, and now he's gone. So the Facebook is kind of inactive, but I still use it to just read other people's tweets. But we do technically have that, and I made a Facebook page for us, but I don't like Facebook. I don't like using Facebook. Only in
Mm.
the last couple of years have I actually posted photos of myself up on Instagram. And I don't really like going by my actual name online most of the time. If you go to Instagram, it says insert Connor here, and then it has my actual last name and first name underneath. I wouldn't usually do that on social media, but Instagram is just pictures. You don't really get comments or people. You get a couple of people connecting with you and things like that, but it's not the same sort of social thing as Facebook and Twitter and places like that. So, I tried to make us a business Facebook page, and I've been told that is not possible unless I have an actual personal page of Facebook, which is not what I want. And I have told them this, and have gotten kind of into a bit of an argument over email with them. And so the Facebook page will be up, and it will be under my name, and I have had to send them identification, even though this is not what I want to do, and I do think
Mm,
it's kind of assholish of them to do this, because I do agree with people who have said, hey, if I'm a victim of this or that, and I don't want my name out there because I don't want such and such finding me or this, I completely understand that. I'm not going to get into it on here, but there are certain people I'd rather not connect with, and I would rather just keep this as a business thing.
mm.
But whatever. But
That's kind of what I do
yeah,
with my Facebook page as well. I never use my Facebook for anything personal, never put up any posts. I just mostly use it to check my what is it? Check updates on my dojo, look at stuff on Marketplace, and post out reminders of some of my
mm,
classes that I do for my self defense.
okay,
It was a lot of fun to do. Which is the only
yeah,
thing, sorry, that I do for Facebook. Every other time I have to deal with people going, "Oh, hey, you want to post something? You want to post something on Facebook?"
yeah.
No, I do not want to post something on
No,
Facebook. Piss
I
off.
don't tell people. I only just joined Facebook recently, and if someone asks them on Facebook business or unless it's for the podcast, I'll be telling them no because it's just that's what it's used for. The blurb is still going to say Insert Cast Productions, which is for this podcast and for Insert Cast Podcast, and that's all that you guys will see on that page. If you want to see my trip and things like that, and some of my photography, you can go to my Instagram for that. Occasionally, I post some things that I do in my own life, but I don't use that as a vlog. If you want to know about me or Eric, listen to this podcast or Insert Cast. That's usually where we. Well, actually, yeah, just listen to this one. That's usually where you'll find information out about me and Eric. And we don't talk about everything, obviously, about ourselves. There's certain things we just don't talk about, which I think is fine. I think we're allowed a certain degree of privacy with this, and I am a little bit annoyed that I can't just have a page for the show. But hey, whatever. We'll figure something out with it. Trying to keep relatively positive with this. So yeah, that happened this week. So if they are listening, yeah. So that happened. Still making my way through Persona, and yeah, making my way through this. So Eric really wants to get into this.
I'm happy to keep talking. Yeah,
But
to keep talking as
but we're
well.
gonna we're gonna just take a quick 2 second break here, and then we're gonna get back into things.
Mm.
So we'll be back after that. Okay, guys, so we are going to get now into the second part of our review of Rose of Versailles, and our first episode is episode 19. But before we
Hmm.
get into that, I wanted to just get into some background information on the staff on this half. So, one thing we didn't mention was the art. That's by Akio Sugino. He's did art for the first part as well. But I think his art really shows here, and even some of his character designs that you've maybe seen in some of his previous stuff, like Ashino Joe and stuff like that, seem to, I think, come out a bit more in this. What did you think of the art, Eric? Did you?
I think it was much better than the first half. With this kind of artwork, it does alleviate the tension and the yeah, does alleviate the tension and kind of I guess provides a bit more detail to the characters at this point. And it just looks really good, really cool. And the lines are more defined, and it's far better shading. And the coloring is just more beautiful.
Hmm.
So yeah, I really enjoy the artwork in this. Although, truth be told, I hadn't managed to look at any of the director's other works,
Well,
but this looks really brilliant.
in this half, we also we're coming into the 80s with the show, so the animation quality is just a lot better, just because of the time period now, and the arts obviously, and the colorings. That's all gonna just get a lot better just with the way things are going, with the time period. Um, so yeah, the Akio Sugino, his art style, I would describe it as semi sort of portrait, like kind of trying to be realistic, but mixed with that anime style
Mm-hmm.
from that time period. And this is obviously having to also copy Ryoko Ikeda's art style. They can't really change the characters too much, but obviously you can tell Sugino adds kind of his own touch to the character designs. And Akio Sugino, usually his best stuff was usually working with a guy called Osamu Dezaki, who we've reviewed already something that he's directed, which was Lupin the Third from Russia with Love. And this show, he is the director for the second half from 19 to 40. And I think the directing, you could definitely say, changes. The pacing's a lot faster. The shots are. It was very cinematic in the first, but I think it's even more cinematic and more theatrical. Well, maybe a little bit less. I'd say it's more. Yeah, it's more cinematic now. And I would definitely say that just everything's a little bit faster, and he's definitely better. I think we talked about this briefly, but I think the portraits are handled a little bit better. The freeze frame sort of shots that are in the show that it's famous
Mm.
for. The best ones are in the second half because he knew where to put them and where to place them, and he would get his team to make them look really good. Because I think the first half there's a couple that look pretty good, but I don't think they're used nearly nowhere near as well as they're used here. What did you think, Eric, of Dazaki's directing in the second half?
I think it was definitely much better than the first half. But I think where I think it's better in the second half is the first half. The directing mostly took its time to introduce us to the story. You know, the characters, the
Mm, mm.
plot, the how the ruling courts worked.
Sorry, excuse me.
So
Am I too quiet at the moment?
no, no, you're good.
Okay.
But basically, the second half, it actually just alleviates the tension as I've said before about with the art. But in this scenario, the the characters are put into far worse situations. The courts are, falling apart. The nobles are turning against one another. The tension is just building and building and building. And I think the directing was done quite well for this because with the characters' tones, the actions they take, and essentially the arguments that are taking place between them, it doesn't. The dialogues don't bore you really. They just help you understand how the tension works in this. So I think with this direction they've taken the directing so much better than the first half. Where the first half is just mostly introductions. The second half is here we go. Let's start concluding this whole let's see, clusterfuck known as the French Revolution.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's get into what episode 19 is about. Episode 19, I'd say we're not quite out of part two yet. Sorry, part one yet. We don't really get out of that until I would say episode sort of around episode 20 and 21 is where well, 21 is where we're out of that zone. But episode
Mm.
19, we're finishing off the arc from episode 18, which is basically Polynix, the stuff
Mm.
going on with her and what's revealed in this episode and
It
all that
is.
good
It
stuff.
is.
Sorry, we should put I mean, this is obvious, but spoilers ahead.
Mhm. There is one thing I do wanna say. It was hard for me to kind of you mentioning that it might not be out of the first half of this series.
Mm,
It
mm,
was hard for me to kind of imagine that, considering the dark tones that immediately get addressed in this sort of episode, which makes me think, oh wow, we're really getting into it, aren't we?
mm.
But at the same time, you are correct in saying it might not be out of the first half yet because Paul Nick is still included in
I
this, and she was
Yeah.
she was a decent character villain. in the
Mm.
previous half.
Hmm.
Well, to the extent that she can be. Um, and obviously this is what is it? This does episode 19 and onwards does kind of what is it? Yeah, it does kind of build up Polnick as this this villainous that continues on through the second half. Not exactly as you know as much a villainous as some other characters,
She's not the best
but
villain, I'd say, in the show.
no, I think it's her actions that make her the villain for this part. Because even though her the way she acts and the way she holds herself up doesn't exactly count isn't exactly to compare to Dewberry or even God forbid what is it Jean Veloz,
Mm,
almost forgot the
mm,
name. She her actions I think are what
yeah.
dictates
We'll
her
we'll get
villainy.
into that. You're rushing too far ahead. So we're still on 19, where we've been introduced to Charlotte, Polynix's daughter, and in this episode, she's forcing her daughter to marry. I called him Shakespeare Noble. He just basically looks like Shakespeare, and he's one of those hoity-toity kind of noble guys. And
Mm.
she's very young. She doesn't want to marry this guy. She wants to marry
Yeah,
Oscar.
14 is pretty young by our current modernistic standards.
I guess at the time period it wasn't young, but you can tell she doesn't really want to rush into this.
No.
She wants to if she wants to be with anyone, it's Oscar. And I gotta be honest, I didn't feel sorry for her because they don't really do a good job of making her a round out, fleshed out character that has she's kind of just defined by being a snobby royal person, and
And I
that's
think that's
really it.
I think I think that's where it kind of disappoints me with how they treated her character, because I think she had the potential to
Mm,
continue on for a little bit longer.
yeah.
Especially with the changing character and her attitude towards her mother. Suddenly realizing the how far her mother would go to actually continue to have power. And by keeping power, I mean having relations with the queen. Um, obviously, this creates a wedge in the relationship between um, Charlotte and Polinick,
Mm, mm.
and basically, yeah, it's pretty yeah, it pretty much
Yeah.
all kind of goes and ends with pretty what is it ends with a pretty sad ending for Charlotte, unfortunately.
We
Um,
we do also get a big reveal in this episode, and there are two different ways it's revealed with the characters, and I thought the way they revealed this twist of Polinak was done really well. There's a really nice shot of her, and great use of curtains and just like the way the set, like the way they've designed the background with the character, really sets the mood and the tension of her realizing that she's ran over the woman that looked after her illegitimate child, and that her child is actually Rosalie from the first half that we reviewed, the poor girl who's being taken in by Oscar, and yeah, we find out that Polinick's basically her mum, and yeah, and the way it's revealed, it's not so great with Oscar and Andre. I thought it was much better with Polinick, because you get to when Oscar and Andre find out about this, and it's literally Andre finds out, says it to Oscar, then tells everybody else sort of. Um,
it is almost a trope how it's all
well,
revealed,
they
because
have a really dumb
yeah,
exposition scene as well, where Andre and Oscar are like, "Oh, poor Rosalie. She has to find out that the person she wanted revenge on is actually her mother." Isn't that shocking? It's like, come on, guys. We're cheesy, but we're not this cheesy.
yeah, it does. Well, I mean, it is the whole series does have a lot of cheesy
Oh
moments.
yeah, yeah, but
Some are
this one
quite
was just,
some
I thought was just not well handled. It just felt like bad exposition to me.
Yeah, and I mean some of it is pretty what is it? Some of it can easily be recognized, and then others yeah, others does take a bit of time. But this trope of two characters discussing, two characters or more discussing a secret, and then suddenly the third party that wasn't supposed to hear this comes in comes in just outside of their side and overhears it, and suddenly there's the drama. The secret is revealed by the first party, and then the third party is just they're listening without any sort of intention, and yeah, it's almost like I'm not sure if it's insulting it by saying this, but it almost seems like a Home and Away or one of those
Yeah, it
soap
is.
opera
Well,
drama
it is very sitcom.
scenarios.
It is very sitcom. But to
Very.
be fair, most shoujo is actually pretty sitcom.
It
If you really look
is.
at it, especially modern like
Yeah.
shoujo, where it's not about like history stuff or it's not really going into other genres where it's just romance. It's basically a sitcom.
Mm. I mean,
It's just slightly
yeah.
better written sitcom.
Well, I mean, when you're handling a shoujo manga, I do expect to see some sitcom tropes
Mm,
and scenarios.
mm,
But obviously, it kind of clashes with the whole subject of the French Revolution being involved.
mm,
So, but it was still pretty good to
mm.
see that reveal, because it moves the story along instead of how was it? How do you say it? It doesn't stretch it out.
No,
We're not expecting to hear that Polonique and Rosalie are related another 5 episodes down the line.
no,
Okay,
no.
it's good to do it early on so
Yeah.
that it can continue the story.
I do feel like this episode has a bit more of Tadal's influence, though. I don't feel like Osamu Dazaki is quite in the directing chair as much on this episode. I think once we get into episode 20, which is about Thurston leaving to go to fight in the American Revolution, that's when the episode feels like it's a little bit more like a Dazaki one. It feels like the start of him getting into the directing chair, and they're officially saying, okay, this is the second half. We've gotten through like a little bit of an arc with our main villain, like from the end of the first half. We're now going into new territory, you know.
Mm. I mean, kind of. The most of the stuff I have on episode 20 centers around the um, conflicts in the courts over Fersen and Marie's
Mm,
affair, which I put a question mark on this, but whether or not it's been revealed. There's enough rumors spread around that potentially some people have it in their head that yes, it's true, but it being revealed is, I think it was kind of difficult for me to pinpoint, like how many people in the court actually knew that Thurston and Marie were together, and how many were just kind of solidifying in their
mm,
heads and making it seem like a jump from reality,
mm.
where they yeah make a jump from reality where their own lies take
It's
form into their
it's
own
interesting
truth.
in this episode too, Oscar's part in this episode because Marie just assumes like Oscar's on her side and trusts her, and at this point she
Yeah,
does, but she has her doubts and she knows like this isn't good, and their relationship. And
yeah,
Thurston ends up making the choice to leave, I think, a little bit because of what's going on. But Oscar, in the end, ends up diffusing the situation by coming to this ball that's been hosted where Thurston is and Mary Antoinette is, and she basically turns up in her fancy, pretty cool looking formal guard uniform,
mm,
and basically steals the show, takes Mary Antoinette for a dance, and basically everybody's looking at them instead of looking at Thurston, and he basically gets his chance to sort of have the tension taken off of him and get away.
yeah. But at the same time, it's solidified his belief that being in the courts and being with Marie is causing so much tension that it just, what is it, in a Shakespearean fashion, creates so much torment for the both of them that it'll at one point tear them both apart.
Mm, mm,
So I think that's kind of the main. I think that would be the main reason for Ferguson leaving to America, and not because of the volunteer forces. Um, but while we're on, but just earlier when you mentioned that
The
Oscar,
uniform.
no, no,
It's a pretty
with
bitchin'
Oscar and
uniform you
Marie,
got to admit.
it was a pretty cool uniform.
Cool blue
Especially with
color.
whites and blues is the main color. With hardly any other colors placed in, it does create a great mix of it. And of course, blue being my favorite color, I am quite supportive of that uniform. But the one thing I wanted to mention is how you pointed out that Marie was trying to find some loyalty with Oscar. Just wanted to kind of point out there was a line that Marie said. While everyone spreads rumors, you're the only one who are loyal.
Mm.
I probably butchered that line, but or maybe the English translations butchered that line, but it does. But you are correct in that assumption that no one in the court is really loyal to Marie anymore. They because Marie's having this affair because she's kind of going after riches and gambling. Um, they all feel like they don't have to be loyal to her anymore. She's not the queen they would respect. And instead, Oscar, who is placed as the royal guard captain and the defender, is the one who's the most loyal to Marie. So yeah, it does.
Mm.
Yeah, and it does kind of lead to Oscar, making the decision to try and help Marie out. Despite the kind of person Marie is, which yeah, it's rather interesting. It's rather unique brand of loyalty that that Oscar has, which I really like seeing.
Mm. Mm. So 21 to just mostly 21 is the start of well, it's the beginnings of the affair of the necklace, which is we're getting introduced to some of the things that are going to affect it later on. We get Cardinal Rowan is back and he's gambling, and Jean is back and yeah,
Drinking all the vodka in the world.
she's chugging down that vodka.
Jeez, I swear, her introductions are just sad. They're like watching the start of a crime thriller drama where the main detective is a complete alcoholic, and you see them drinking away, and you think, oh my god, you are less cool than you would have
Well,
been out to be.
Well, I don't think she's the only alcoholic in this series because I'm pretty sure the dad's an alcoholic, Oscar's dad. He's always got a wine in his hand.
No, he is not an alcoholic. It's just the trope of the French note, or
Okay.
the habit of the French
He
nobles.
drinks
Like all
way
the
more
French
than
nobles
anybody
drink.
else in the show, though.
You do know that Oscar drinks almost as much wine as his dad,
I
right?
wouldn't say
Her
as
dad,
much.
right?
Alright, well, anyways, this episode, we get into some crucial parts that are going to establish things for the arc later on. So, we've got Jean's sort of first establishment and her first connection really with Cardinal Rowan. She's basically setting up that she. Why don't you explain this, Eric, for us?
Probably don't have that many notes when it comes up in episode 20, but in episode 21, obviously, Jean realizes that she's running out of money, possibly from gaining whatever inheritance she got from killing the old
That
lady who
vodka could have
adopted
been
her.
expensive. You never know.
Yeah, vodka would have been expensive. It would have been quite closer to moonshine at that point,
Yeah.
which would have been close to illegal at that point. Well, you have no idea. If you look it up, if for anyone who's interested, also look up the origin of moonshine in Russia for a great example as to why moonshine was considered to be
Mm,
illegal.
mm,
Anyway, the episode, I guess 20 and 21 reintroduces Jean and follows how she tries to gain more money, gain more influence, and just be an all around
mm.
complete villainess for this arc. So, her attempts at bribing Oscar to establish connection with Marie Antoinette doesn't work because Oscar doesn't take bribes. Instead, Oscar kicks the donkey that carries the gold and makes it run towards John, which I thought was a pretty funny thing to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, oh my, how much gold did you have, Sean? How much money do you have left? This is ridiculous.
She was raining in money.
Um, It does. And then at the same time, when John realizes that's not exactly going to go well, she
Mm.
lies to Rohan, who she promised to establish connections through Oscar, and uses other methods to extort money from Rohan in the form of, what was it, writing letters,
Forging
making
letters.
forging
She
letters from the
hires a
Queen.
forger. We should mention this now because he is going to come up later on.
Hmm.
And he basically, sorry, she basically says that Marie Antoinette, is what likes the cardinal, and basically starts writing these forged letters, and it gets to the point where the cardinal wants to see the queen. So what she does is she hires a prostitute that looks very much like Marie Antoinette, and gets that prostitute to come out into the garden, and basically say that they've got an alliance and all this sort of thing. And before they can do anything else, their Oscar comes out of nowhere, and they have to basically make a getaway. And we probably get one of the best freeze frames in the show, where Oscar, at the end of the episode, Oscar is walking towards the water, and you can see John walking forward, and just in her coat, you can just see a slip of her holding a knife, ready to maybe backstab Oscar. It's a great shot.
It was also going to be a bad idea, and I enjoy that Jean understands that because let's in all honesty, I don't think Jean would what is it? I don't think Jean would have been able to win in a fight, even if she manages to injure Oscar, because Oscar
No.
would have just gotten up and like, "You dare strike me, wench? Have
Oscar's
at
had some
thee!"
pretty big brawl fights as well in bars and shit, so she can
I
probably
know
handle herself
Oscar is
pretty well.
awesome. Oscar is awesome. Getting a bar fight, getting drunk. You kind of forget sometimes that that character is a chick.
Yeah.
Instead of a brawling guy, and you
Mm.
just it kind of comes back and surprises you.
So that's mostly episode 21. And then, well, before I get into 21, I wanted to maybe touch on some real life facts of Jean. So Jean had a brother and sister,
Mm.
but her sister was not called Rosalie. Her sister was called Marie. And the way she dies in this show, we'll get into that, is very different from the way she died in real life. But those are the two major differences I certainly noticed what getting into these episodes.
Hmm. Yeah, I had a look at that as well. She did have quite a few siblings, whether or not they're related or not. And one of those siblings was called Marie. I can't remember exactly what happened to the siblings. I think some of them, or I probably most of them died anyway. But yeah, but I think Jean did definitely run away and try to, yeah, and got adopted by a rich family.
Mm, mm,
Which I guess was a good advantage to her,
mm.
considering that's what she was planning to do all along. Considering she felt like carrying the Velo name meant you should have the glory and the riches of the name as well. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't really work that way. Although it might work that way in some way, shape, or form, but not exactly going to work in this scenario for her.
And it's in these next couple episodes 23 to sort of 25, where we're now at the officially we're at the sorry, give me one sec actually. Cool. Okay, so we're now, once we get into episode sort of 22, we get a little bit back to what Marie Antoinette, what's going on with her. She has her kids, and yeah, those kids don't look like the king's kids because they're Fersine's kids. And yeah,
Well,
they were
I
lucky
think I
Fersine wasn't black or tanned or.
one thing, yeah, that's the one. Like a couple of things I want to mention. One is, regardless, it would still be hard to tell whose kids is a who until until they would have grown older and the features would have been far more defining,
Mm,
depending
mm,
which of the parents would have had the more what is it, dominant genes.
yeah.
The other thing is, and I should mention, there is a There's a book, I can't remember who it was by, which details the affair between Thurston and Marie, and includes the possibility that I think of the four children that Marie Antoinette had, two of them were Thurston's, the other
Mm,
two were King Louis.
mm,
So chances are, I think Marie, just to keep up appearances, would have still had to have slept with King Louis.
yeah.
But at the same time, her continued affair would have come up, would have gotten her pregnant as well.
Mm,
So I
mm,
think in that time, in that sort of time period, in that scenario, it worked out well for her.
mm. And in this episode, Marie's mother also dies, and yeah, which is kind of sad. But
Yeah,
in this arc, we also at the start of this episode, I believe, or it might have been the start of the last episode, we get an introduction to the necklace that's going to be a part of the affair of the necklace, and
that
basically
was a
it's offered.
beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, it's offered to Marie Antoinette, and she says how much was the necklace, Eric?
I think, as far as I remember, it would have been worth, what is it? Would have been worth thousands of dollars.
Mm, mm.
I have to quickly look at this again, but it was a very expensive necklace because it was made of, what is it, over 24
Diamonds?
diamonds.
Yeah.
Yeah, diamonds included in it. The Yeah, the diamonds were intricately put together, and it just looked amazing. Let me have a look. I think I've got it somewhere here. Oh, no. Oh, you're not gonna tell me, are you? Let's
We'll
see.
just say it was worth a lot of money for the time,
I'll
and
get I'll get the exact amount just so
to
we
the
can get.
to the point where it was worth so much that it basically she said no, because if she had bought it, it would have basically put everybody in France in even more debt than and would have had to raise their taxes even more.
Oh, here we go. In the let's see, from the Encyclopedia Britannica,
mm,
the value at then for the currency was 1.6 million livres, which I think translates to maybe two to 500,000
mm,
US
mm,
dollars,
mm.
as far as I can
Yeah,
remember,
but
which is a lot of money.
in this episode, Jean basically finds out about this necklace because I think it gets sold to her at one point, and she basically tricks the cardinal into thinking that he's going to pay an upfront cost, and then Maria's going to pay him back because they're buddies. So yeah, that ends up happening. Marie gets a letter about it. Does it like looks at it like, what the hell is this? Okay, burns it, and then basically gets a call from the cardinal who comes in, talks about this necklace, and while this is all going on, John, a little bit before this, basically, manages to get the necklace and gives it to her husband to go to sell in England, and gets the forger to hide in Switzerland, who's written all these notes and stuff, and who forged Marie Antoinette's signature because there's also this contract that says you'll pay the first couple payments when they come in, but the cardinal is going to pay an upfront cost. And
Hmm.
basically, the she go yeah Cardinal goes to Marie Antoinette, and her and her guards say we're not having any of this, and this basically starts the court case, which is the affair of the necklace, and yeah. And while this is going on, America gets independence at the same time, and yeah, I think that's yeah. Sorry, this is 22 and 23. I think I just mentioned there's 22. This is 22 and 23, and while this is going, well, a little bit while this is going on, Jean is sneaking around looking for the prostitute that she uses, Marie Antoinette, and because that could be a bad witness for her. So she goes and tries to kill the prostitute. She can't kill the prostitute. I figure it's because she sees, and we've argued about this, but I think it's because she can see a little bit of herself. She came from
Mm.
a poor background. She sees this girl is also from a poor background. So
Yeah,
does she.
it's kind
Yeah.
of hard to it's kind of hard to understand that, considering that, well, she's, all the stuff Jean's done. She seems to be the kind of person who wouldn't care
Mm,
about what she has to do to get her way, or to get to get away, or what she could do to get all the money she needs. So her hesitating to murder the prostitute is a bit confusing, because it does bite her in the back. She's willing to lie, she's willing to steal, she's willing to forge her way through to riches, and then she refuses to kill the prostitute because she sees a bit of herself inside,
mm,
which is a bit hard because, as I've mentioned, Jean took the Valo name very seriously. So if she would have seen herself as anything, it would have been as someone who was unfairly treated because they're supposed to be of rich lineage.
mm,
For this blind girl, we have no clue where she comes from.
mm.
What she was like in her life. Was she born blind, or was she made
I
blind
think
at
you
some
can
point?
see though that because she's given her a lot of money and because they're both girls, there's sort of a connection just there in general with them, and I do think it helps that they're both from the same background as well.
Hmm. I mean,
I
yeah, the
think this is
background.
also just a moment for the writers to sort of give her some sympathy, something for you to sort of say, well, she's a bad guy, but she won't kill this, girl who's kind of in a similar situation.
Yeah, kind of. I'm still
Yeah.
not buying it.
I really
Um,
like there's a piece of animation when she's in court because yeah because she doesn't kill the prostitute and basically they find that she's there and the guards take her and she goes to court and while she's in court she is right before she goes to court Oscar is trying to give her this ring that's from her and Rosalie's mother. Rosalie really wants her to wear it and she does end up wearing it in court and there's a shot of her in court, very nervously shaking, but she's got this big smug smile on her face, and I thought it was just a great shot because we can hear we're hearing her inner monologue while we're also seeing her shake, but she's got this smile. It's all these different things going on that are showing us her exact emotional feelings, and I just thought that was a great piece of animation.
yeah, I think the trial was handled really well and directed, and everyone acting there did really well. Especially the Jean's own acting,
Mm.
how she tried to portray herself, how she used these lies where, in some cases you'd think lies would kind of catch up to you and ruin your life,
Mm.
but even when they did for Jean, she still lied, and she used these lies as
Well,
great weapons to create dissent, like further dissent,
It's
which.
it's interesting. She has the people side more on her than the court side, you could say, because all of the stuff she says, the people 100% agree with her and are for her, and they'll believe whatever she says because they have such distrust in the queen that they're
Yeah,
willing to believe almost anything. But the court, they've got this. They're royal themselves, so they can't say no.
yeah,
They
they
can't
said
disagree.
they had that line where the courts cannot be controlled, or matters cannot be handled when involving the royal family. But
Mm,
there's also vice versa. The royal family can't do anything to the courts either.
mm.
But that's a bit
That's bullshit.
that's taking it a bit too lightly. We know what the courts are like. We know what the system is like in this era
Mm,
of
mm,
France. Really
mm,
it's really corrupt. It's really
mm.
un, you know it's just all about control, all
Yeah.
about who your friend is, where you
And
can actually.
mm,
Yeah.
and man, does she puts up quite a fight in this whole thing. She basically calls Marie Antoinette a lesbian and says that they've had an affair. And then it's like, yeah, Oscar's also involved in this shit. And
And Oscar
I
wants.
couldn't help, it was a little cheesy. I couldn't help but when Rosalie's like, Joe, what the hell? She's
It's
like,
like,
oh my god.
Oscar, Oscar, are you serious? It's like, it's a lie. I didn't do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh no,
it
just
was.
just Rosalie reacting to Jean accusing Oscar, and she's like, "Oh, please don't."
Yeah, and this was after
Uh,
Rosalie gave Jean their mother's
yeah,
ring,
yeah.
which was like, oh, Rosalie, you poor girl. This is like worse than the
And
kicking
and
in the
then and then so the court ends up going in favor, of course, of the Queen and sides of them. And so the forger, he probably gets off the easiest out of everybody. Oh, well, actually, no. The cardinal gets off the easiest, along with
Yep,
the
there we go.
prostitute. They both just get off scot-free, no problems, which is kind of shit. Because you think Marie Antoinette not liking the cardinal would at least, do something. And by the way,
Unfortunately, unfortunately,
couldn't
he
she?
is a man of God, so he gets to get away with it.
Yeah, but she has more power than him, technically. I don't know why she didn't just kick him out of the country or something.
Because I think as soon as the church hears that a cardinal has been executed, they
I
might
wouldn't
kick up a
execute him. I
fuss.
just mean exile him or something.
Yeah, I think even that will kick up a fuss
Mm,
from the church because the church feels that because the church does have
yeah,
absolute power to do most
yeah.
things. So when it when it comes time that one of their cardinals gets kicked out,
Mm,
or
yeah.
gets murdered and
So,
they hear about it, they kick up a
mm,
fuss.
so yeah, that happens to the cardinal. The prostitute gets off scot free, and then her husband. We don't, he's in England still, so and they don't know where he is, so he's fine. But the forger, who's only, he gets, well, he doesn't get it too badly. He gets 50 lashes and then exiled from the country. And if I was him, I would just say, fuck it, I'm going back to Switzerland. Or I'd say, hey, 17th century, maybe I'll go back to America or I'll go somewhere else.
I mean, yeah. Either way, anything would have worked out. I think with his forgery skills, he might have been best to come to England
Mm, mm.
for various reasons. And yeah, but I mean, either way, he has any choice. The skill
But
of forgery is
his punishment ain't too bad. Like 50
no,
lashes and an exile, it's not too bad.
it really
He
isn't.
didn't seem like he had too many connections in France, anyways, to be honest.
Well, being a forger, while that's a good that's a great skill to have. It's not exactly well
He
liked.
probably made a lot of enemies, so it's probably
Oh,
good to
definitely.
get the fuck out of the country when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it would have made him a lot of
Mm,
enemies, despite the unfavorable opinions of
yeah.
the Queen. Um,
Jean's punishment of getting basically I think it's the sign of guilty. The French word for it starts with V, and
I've been trying to look for that.
yeah.
So it's a bit weird, but the oh, I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, it might have been the French word for guilty. I've been trying to figure out what the branding was,
Mm, mm.
and what it meant, but could hardly find anything.
She puts up
I have
quite a
to.
fight though, and she fights to the bitter
Oh,
end.
she went out kicking and
Yeah,
screaming, and then fainted from the pain.
yeah,
Which bit of a bitch move, but
yeah.
okay.
And because of all of this, and as you talked about, she fights the bitter end, and then after this point, she kind of just gives up. And in this point, we get introduced to Duke Orleans again. He is back in a pretty cool silver mask, and he basically he basically helps John escape. And then Jean writes a novel that is her story, that is basically telling all these scandalous tales
hmm
that are getting the Queen quite bad press, you could say.
Yeah, it's lowering her reputation way less than it already is, which is impressive, by the way. Um, so it does actually, yeah, it does definitely create, um, it seems to create a narrative that the queen is someone who's this salacious, this secretive, and this low that she'd undertake relationships that are out of the norm
Hmm.
while the other people aren't allowed to, and other various things she'd be doing, like getting involved with buying a necklace,
Hmm.
which is a pretty well done, pretty clever on the Duke's part.
Hmm. And then at this point, we also have Rosalie disowning her mother, and it's quite a pivotal scene, and Rosalie gets to have quite a bit of a backbone. But then later on in the episode, Polinick comes back and basically threatens her using Oscar's image as a way to sort of get her to come back to the family. And there's a
Yeah, it's a bit
really,
of blackmailing.
yeah, and there's a really sad scene where Oscar is on the stairs and asking Rosalie, "Why are you leaving? I know you don't want to go to Polynick. Why are you going to Polynick?" And she
Yeah,
can't
it's
really
like,
tell
who
her
the hell
why.
wants to go with her? Who wants to
Yeah,
go with her?
yeah.
Yeah.
And in this episode, kind of, it's funny. So Rosalie basically kind of rats out her sister where she is because she gets a note from her sister, and it's funny. She goes and tells Oscar this, and so Oscar's getting all the cavalry ready and all that, and then just as that's happening, all the royals are like, "Oh yeah, we know where the location is." So it's like, wait,
Well,
how the
that's
hell did they
convenient.
find out so quick? And I'm thinking,
Duke of Orleans.
Duke Orleans probably stabbed her in the back. So
Mm.
then Oscar and her gang end up going in to get them, and Oscar says, "Oh no, I'm going to go in by myself." She goes in. She gets almost choked out by Jean's husband, and John basically at this point, as I said, she's given up, and she says, "No, we're not going to fight it," and stabs her husband in the back, and brings him down to where the dynamite is, and lights one of them up, and they're basically going to die together.
I'd
And
just like to point
yeah,
out on that dynamite. Just for clarification, the barrels of gunpowder will create a bigger boom. And I'm pointing that out because the bigger boom just looks awesome in the anime. Just the explosion, the sound, and the whole effect, it just looked fantastic. Um, and obviously the quick little bit of narration at the end where it's trying to figure out who freed Jean and who had her write these novels was buried into the buried
her
in
death is
secret.
a lot less, shall we say, Hollywood, a lot less like dramatic. Her death, she just fell out of a window. That's how she died in real life.
Yeah, dying as she lived, a
Yep.
bitch.
And my only other thing I'm gonna mention in this episode is how the fuck did Andre hear Oscar? How did he know
For
she
the
was in pain?
for the
Like,
power of love, we
oh
had.
Jesus.
I think we had this argument already. It's the power of love. All
Yeah.
right, it's the best thing. It's the best thing that can happen to them. Well, it's
All
the
right.
only thing that could happen to them.
So yeah, so that's the end of the affair of the necklace arc, and we're
Yep.
gonna take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Hi guys, we're at the break right now. So guys, you may not know, but I do another podcast, not just with our great guest Eric here, but I do another podcast called Insert Cast, and we have multiple guests on that podcast where I basically interview people in the audio industry. And we're always looking for new guests. So if you know someone in the audio industry who would like to be on a podcast, please let me know. That can be a sound engineer or a musician or a voice actor or even a voice acting director. Anyone who's in the audio industry, all I ask is that they maybe have some knowledge of the audio technology. Doesn't have to be a sound desk, but maybe even just an amp, sound equipment. And if they have Skype or Zoom or some sort of way that I can talk with them. If they're outside of New Zealand, preferably, something like Skype or something like that, because I can't necessarily always do phone interviews with some of those people. So, you can email me if you know someone at insertcast.co.nz. That's insertcast.co.nz. Let's get back to the podcast. All right, we are back from the break, and basically, what we're up to now is this episode is more focused on just the relationships and less of sort of the physical conflict, more of a mental conflict with Oscar questioning her gender and questioning her feelings for Thurston as he returns. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It is a bit of an interesting one because we have had maybe one or two other mentions of Oscar having some sort of feelings for Furzan, but it wasn't completely established. So something like up to this episode, it does seem to establish itself that Oscar has some sort of feelings for Furzan, which creates which does create which does create this tension between Oscar and Furzan, because Oscar's loyalty to Marie is supposed to be
mm,
much stronger than whatever Oscar is feeling for Furzan.
mm. And you can tell in this episode that Thurston still has some feelings, but they're fading a bit. But Marie's
Hmm.
hasn't quite faded, and Oscar sees this and almost does see this as a chance of she could start a relationship, but she doesn't. I think that's what she wants deep down, but she knows that would be betraying her friendship, and she can't have that even if she wanted to.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a bit of a tragic bit of a tragic love triangle that I
Mm.
think does better than most love triangles do. And that's something I do really like to see, because
She
when you
she
do think,
also yeah, she also wears a dress in this episode as well for the first
oh
time.
yeah, that was great to see. I mean, I was expecting a lot of things, but making her look like, as the series describes it, as a Greek goddess was pretty point on point. So it was a fantastic thing. So it was a fantastic, bit of design to see. It still looked like Oscar. You knew it looked like Oscar, but at the same time, the change was so drastic that I'm not surprised nobody recognized Oscar.
Mm.
Um, and then, of course, following that is a moment that I can only describe as Disney-esque. Oscar dancing with Frozen, the lights, the animation, the mood. It was just like, okay, so we're back in what Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, any other any other sort of things
Yeah,
I
it's a
can
real
describe.
prince and princess moment.
Hmm.
So we now get into episodes 26 to 28. These are our Black Knight arc episodes. This is Bernard, one of the politicians. You could say he's not quite a noble, but he's kind of middle class, and him and his group of free friends, Saint Just, and a couple one other person who I can't remember the name, Raspberry or something. The he's one of the main big figures in that, and he basically for a time is dressing up as this thief, this phantom thief, and he's going around and stealing a lot of jewels from royalty. And Oscar is trying to figure out who this is, and there's some really cool chase scenes and sword fights in this arc.
Yeah, it looks really great. Especially with all the planning and all the, all the trying to figure out what's actually going on, and even the identity, trying to figure out the identity of the Black Knight. It was all really well done. Almost like what is it? Almost like trying to crunch down in a few episodes the plot line to, what is it, Detective Conan, which is still pretty cool.
Mm.
Although this does also include a really, what is it, a sad and really tragic moment in episode 26 where Andre loses his eye.
Mm.
Which happens once Andre and the Black Knight were having a fight, and it ends up being, Andre ends up losing an eye because, let's see, because
He gets his
he
eye
was dueling.
slashed in a really cool bit of animation as well.
Um, I guess it was a pretty cool bit of animation. I think the most prominent part about that though was the still shot that was at the end,
Mm.
which I thought was the best looking still shot in the second half of the series, because I just thought it looked fantastic. The shading, the lines, all the even like the darkness itself was great.
Hmm.
And the only thing that really stood out was what was it? The one thing that stood out was Oscar in her on her white horse,
Mm.
while Andre was on the ground, and you know, in the close foreground was the
The
Black
Black
Knight
Knight.
holding the sword. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. I thought there's I think this is also the episode where when this happens, there's a really cool piece of music that's put under the scene when the slash happens, because it's done
Mm-hmm.
kind of in slow motion, and we get this really cool bit of piano music. And what I mean by piano is it's not the keys. What's cool about this is very rare usually in music that you actually hear this. This is someone playing the actual strings on the piano, the really low end strings, and it gives this really ominous, dark tone to the scene that I just loved. I thought that was great.
Mm. Yeah, I do remember that as well, and it's
Yeah.
really nice. Although I wouldn't have been able to tell that
Mm.
it was
Mm.
played on strings. I thought it was actually played on an actual piano with the keys.
Yeah, no, it's played
But
on the low strings, and it's recorded
mm,
in such a way that you can really hear them sort of vibrate. Yeah, it's really interesting. And really adds to the scene. And we find out that the Black Knight might be working for Duke Orleans.
mm,
And while this is all, while this is going, Oscar ends up getting injured and ends up staying with Rosalie, who we find out has left Polynick because Polynick forced her to marry the same noble. And she's basically gone back to her roots and is staying with a friend. And eventually she ends up marrying the Black Knight, weirdly enough.
mm. I know that was pretty fun to actually that was pretty fun to find out. Like
Yeah.
a good happy ending for Rosalie. You
Yeah.
know, because of all the crap she went through.
And yeah, in these episodes where, yeah, once we get past sort of this arc, uh, we're into sort of just a little bit of an arc with Oscar and Andre, and we get introduced to Elaine, who's going to come into importance. He's our bro frat dude kind of guy. He's the he's our cool best friend who's
Hmm.
really, you get a lot of these type of guys in 80s and 70s anime, who's like the tough guy, who's your friend, who's going to help you out. He's going to be the man's man. He's the those who have seen Macross will know there's a character like this, who I'm just going to say fruit salad. People will know what that is referencing to. But yeah, he's introduced, and he becomes Andre's drinking buddy, and they become good friends, and this will come to importance when we get introduced to the French guards. But in this arc, we kind of have a bit of a controversial moment. Andre, he's going through his own trauma of the eye and stuff, and there's comes to be
Mm.
a bit of a collision with the friendship with Oscar and Andre, and Andre might have some feelings, and he almost sort of sexually assaults Oscar, and
Mm.
quite a tough moment to watch,
It
and
was it is a moment that's left both of them vulnerable
yeah.
and desperate for some sort of understanding of the
And
situation.
it ends up affecting the friendship quite badly, as they don't really talk to
Mm.
each other or have really a connection for a while.
Mm.
And both of them end up, well, Oscar ends up getting offered another position by the Queen, and she decides not to take it.
Or rather,
And
Oscar decides she doesn't want to be part of the royal guard anymore,
yeah, yeah,
and so asks the queen to place her anywhere else but there.
yep.
So she gets placed in the French Guards Company B,
Mm.
which was your standard not generic standard what is it wild card company.
Yeah.
You know, there's guys who don't listen to what the higher ups say or
They're a
don't
group
agree
of
with
tough,
everything they
manly
say.
men, and they don't quite like
Essentially,
having a female commander. This is, a bit of a
no, they
problem.
don't.
And Oscar, they don't like that she's a royal either. That's a bit of a problem
Mm,
too. And Andre gets found out for been associated with her and gets beaten up for this, and it's that's the main gist of what's happening in these episodes. And also, Oscar's dad ends up trying to get her to marry one of her former commanders,
Hmm. Or
Gerarda,
second
or
in command.
yeah, one of her fellow commanders,
Hmm.
and she's not having any of that. She has one really cool moment where her father, like for a friend, holds a ball where she's like, "You'll dress up as a woman and you'll go there and you'll get someone." And Oscar turns up just dressed up in a regular outfit, and she's like, "Man, this is a sausage." She basically says like, "This is a sausage fest. There's no girls here at all. This isn't a ball."
Bye. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
the manner in which she says it is, the French manner, so quite fancy.
yeah, yeah,
But essentially, yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well. That's pretty much how she
yeah.
said it.
Now, Eric, why don't you sum up for us the next couple episodes before we get into episodes 37 to 40?
Okay, so let's see. So basically, these episodes is essentially building up towards the French Revolution. So there has now come into formation what's called the Third Estate. So this is a collection of the poorer and the more lower class citizens who want to argue against the royal family, who are part of the First and also Second Estates, that their policies, their taxes, their actions they've taken, they're all just making everything worse and harder for them. Um, obviously, obviously, there's other what is it? There's obviously other things involved, such as the what is it? The
There's a lot of
revolutionaries.
assassinations as well at this
There
point
are
from
episode 30 is the most prominent one. Episode
mhm.
31 is another one as well. In episode 30, a lot of nobles do get murdered. Episode 31 has the Spanish king visiting France, who was almost assassinated by what they would call terrorists. Obviously, this was when Oscar was part of Company B, and in Oscar's Company B, one of her subordinates was actually part of that revolutionary group who tries to kill her. Um, and of course, later on down the line is we have what is it? Yeah, we have Oscar struggling to keep ranks and order in Company B, um, and one individual who sold the gun to the terrorists for some money getting trialed, and Oscar having to rescue him. And what else? There's just a lot of
Let-
there's a lot of
I think we
tension
should at
building.
least touch on who that assassin is in those episodes because I've mentioned him before. His name is give me
Saint
one.
Just.
Yeah, give me one sec. Yeah, there's a really cool assassin character. His name's Saint Just. He's in Assassin's Creed. He's in the French one. He's a boss or something, or I think someone you can assassinate. But he was a
Hmm.
famous assassin, and he has some really cool scenes. He's kind of your stereotypical shoujo bad guy, with twitchy eye, long hair, kind of creepy looking. And he has a really cool scene where he jumps on top of a carriage, puts his sword down, and then like this is what I thought was kind of cool, but at the same time I was like, why are you doing this? He jumps off the carriage and into the river, but instead of just doing a regular dive, he does like a really like deep sea dive. Like he gets his body in such a position that is gonna like get him to torpedo down further. Which I thought was kind of cool, but at the same time I was like, why is he doing that? But yeah,
Hmm. Just
cool. It
for
was a cool
dramatic
bit of
effect.
animation, I'll say that.
Yeah, and obviously, following from that, a national assembly was put together to, speak out for the third estate to speak out against the king. And when that was blocked, they took to going to a what was essentially a tennis court, which led to what was called the tennis court oath, where where the people there decided, to agree to make agreements against to argue against the royal family and how to, better decide that they want to better, for them to stop doing what they're doing.
Mm.
But all this kind of sets up, oppression from the king, which leads to more resistance, and you see the king is losing more and more power. I think the pinnacle of this is in episode 34. Um, and just quickly go through episode 35, 36. This is where things really, really get the tension really ramps up. Oscar's basically rebelling against the very the royal family and the nobles and the military itself because they're they've she's had to, in episode 35, had to stop the royal guard, her former comrades, from killing the third estate, which they've been ordered to do upon resistance. Oscar's been branded as a traitor. Oscar's dad tries to kill her. It's a real mess coming up. Of course, the punishment is not handed down to Oscar because Marie is still like, oh, but
We're still
Oscar's my best
besties.
friend. Yeah, pretty much. We do see that Oscar tries to formulate a plan to rescue Elaine and the others. And Saint Just almost screws this up by assassinating Oscar. Wow. But which actually was successful. So Elaine and the others that were to be executed are released. Um, and following from episode 36, the revolutionaries trying to gain the finance minister at the time as their supporter to try and handle the situation better. And then of course Marie orders the armies, the French armies, to move into the city,
Mm.
and it's like, oh, Marie,
And that
Marie,
basically
Marie,
ruins Oscar and Marie's relationship, and they kind of,
more or less.
yeah, they stop being
Oscar,
friends.
more or less. I think at this time, Oscar realizes that the reason she's been feeling down and out of it is because Oscar contracted tuberculosis,
Mm.
which is pretty common, one of the common
And has
diseases next
about a
to
year to live before it
malaria
eventually
and
kills him.
measles and what else, like everything else, even
Yeah.
like cholera and part of
Syphilis
the
would have
and
been quite common back then as well.
oh god, I didn't want to mention that. Um, and of course, this leads on to including,
Uh,
more riots and hostile
yeah.
actions
We're getting
between
into
the
episodes
people.
37 out
Yeah.
of 40. So, episode 37, we have the tuberculosis thing going on.
Mhm.
Oscar ends up finding out that Andre is blind, and there's a very sad moment where there's a very nice painting of Oscar that's being done, and Andre can't see it. But he's trying to describe it to Oscar, and Oscar's just, she knows it's not what it looks like to him, but she's so moved by his by this. We end up
Description.
seeing Andre's vision of her as well, and it's quite pretty looking.
It does look fantastic. The art style is the same, but
Mm.
the image is different. And for Oscar, she doesn't want to ruin this moment because what Andre sees kind of makes her realize, the depths of his feelings for her and how he actually sees her. Because how one describes
Mm.
you, based on what they see, is basically reflected in their feelings.
Mm.
So I think Oscar realizes, you know what? You're actually describing me better than anything this
Yeah,
painting could do. Keep
and
going, buddy. Keep
and
going.
within these episodes, there's also they go into town for like a ball or some sort of thing, and they end up getting attacked by a bunch of revolutionaries and protesters, and their carriage gets destroyed, and they end up being saved by First Scene, who comes back, and in the scene, First Scene, First Scene for a couple minutes is like he's thinking he could get with Oscar, like he's figured he saved her,
Hmm.
he's gonna get Andre, and then like he's gonna him and Oscar are gonna hang out,
Hmm.
but Oscar ends up asking in a very sweet moment, "My Andre, where's my Andre?" And this alludes, to a scene that Oscar likes Andre, and she starts to realize this as well. And yeah, later on, those two, in later episodes, they end up hooking up basically and becoming not officially, but becoming husband and wife. They don't get officially married, but that's basically what their relationship is. And her group of comrades, they congratulate Oscar and Andre, but they also Oscar's thinking of just basically leaving the group, and the guards decide, okay, well, we're not officially the guards anymore, but we'll still work under you. And there's a very cool moment where their main commander, he basically he can't officially say he's not a guard anymore. He can't lead, he can't be with them. But in his way of showing respect for them, uh, he basically says the equivalent of, I don't know what's going on. I didn't hear any of this, and says, well, they're not going to hear about this. I just won't go in tomorrow. And that's just his subtle way of sort of showing how much he respects his group, and while he's not going to do what they're doing, he's going to still show his support for them. And I thought that was a cool little moment. And Oscar and her group end up going out and supporting the revolutionaries. And there's a really cool moment where her and the army are standing like right up against each other, and the army's looking at them like, "Oh, the French guards, they've came to help us." And Oscar just raises her hand, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna shoot you. Like, you gotta move out of our way."
You have till the count. You have till the count of three to get out of my sight before I start popping some caps.
Yeah.
Which was definitely a big. It was actually a really surprising moment because thinking back, Oscar never really tries to actively start a fight with anyone or anything. So I was really surprised by this because Oscar Oscar just effectively went, okay, so we're going to try a new approach. There's no more diplomacy, there's no more peace. Let's just, scare them with the power and tell them to piss off. Really liked seeing that. I did really did like seeing that.
And so that ends up happening, and then while they're trying to get away, they end up going under the sewers, and they come out of the sewers, and there's someone waiting there for them, one of the army guys, and he ends up trying to shoot Oscar. He misses, and Oscar gets him, but in the crossfire, Andre is sadly shot. And yeah, there's a very sad episode where they even try and get about 10 doctors to try and help him, and it's just not going to help.
Yeah, it's in this it's in this scene. Unfortunately, we find out that he got shot through the heart. So, no, in knowing that, yeah, Andre did not have a chance.
Mm.
Although one thing I'll quickly mention about the episode 39 thing is the barricades that were involved. There's a little weird animation there. I'm not sure if it was intentional or not. But at one point, the barricades look exactly like they do historically. But
Oh,
then in another part, they look worse than the sandbag barricades of World War One, World War Two.
yeah.
So I'm not sure why. There was a little bit of weird animation thing to do.
Mm.
Um, and then we follow from episode 39 on to the main part of what's happening. The climax, the
The
storming the Bastille.
Yeah. All right, I'll let you talk about this.
I love that. It's essentially storming a massive castle, which is also known as the I think it's also partially a prison as well. But it's used to help point defenses outwards for any invading force coming to Paris. But in this scenario, and even shown in the anime, the the gods in the castle point their cannons, point their guns towards the citizens, towards the people,
Mm, mm,
and it's like a clear message saying, "Yep, we don't care about who comes to invade as long as you guys shut up and do as you're
mm,
told." Which, of course, creates a massively awesome scene where all the people kind of come together, where they all just scrunch into just one big massive pile, and these tens of thousands of citizens are going up against the Bastille, which has only 114 soldiers, but still creates such a struggle for them that so many of them die. and of course, they're trying to storm it. And and of course, eventually Oscar gets over her hissy fit. I mean, sorry, not hissy fit. That's a bit too
Hey,
insensitive. Yeah, I know that was a
her
bit
her
insensitive.
her lover dies, and she has a
I know,
very
I was thinking
dramatic
of something
moment.
else, and that kind of got in
I
the way.
thought
Once Oscar quickly
gets over
got
her
her shit
traumatic
together.
bloody husband dying.
Yeah, okay. How about Oscar gets her shit together? How's that sound?
She
All
gets.
right.
I thought it was very well handled that moment because she. It's very real. Actually, you could say it's cheesy, but it's very realistic actually because she's this commander. She's meant to be tough for her comrades,
But she
and
does. But she does show the depths of
yeah,
her feeling
she
towards
can't
Andre.
help but show up. But then there's a really great moment I thought, and you could say this is cheesy, but I liked it, where she talks to Elaine and she says, "Kit, she says, all right, I'll go fight." And then she says, "Can I please just cry one last time for Elaine? Just let me get it out." And yeah, Elaine says sure, and basically let her emotions out. And
Mm,
we,
yeah.
we, we actually we forgot to mention something that's very important about Elaine's character that sort
Oh,
of
I
helps.
thought we were going to. I thought we were going to also mention how the whole the fight started between Oscar and the cavalry that was there.
We'll get into that. I just realized we forgot to mention this, and it is an important part of what's going on in this episode here. So Elaine helps Oscar get through this traumatic moment because a couple episodes later, sorry, not later, a couple episodes before, Elaine had also went for a very traumatic moment. His sister,
Mm.
who was, the belle of the ball for all the guards, they absolutely loved her and they thought she was the prettiest thing. And then she ends up getting married, and it seems like a good time. And then this nobleman decides he's to dump Elaine's sister, and because of everything because of that happening and because of their situation, she ends up killing herself, and Elaine ends up staying for many days just by her bedside with her rotting corpse there, and it's a very sad moment. But
It was a
yeah,
really depressing moment to see because we all loved Elaine, okay? Even when he gets introduced the first time, you
and he's
can't
such
help
a
but think,
tough character, you don't expect it from him.
yeah. And he doesn't seem to have any sort of issues or any
Mm,
sort of deep concerns about himself or insecurities, He's always confident, he's always cheery. And then you see this scene and you just think to yourself, this guy just looks so broken.
mm,
Like it's just so sad. You kind of just want to go
mm.
and hug him, but
But
you're like, "Oh,
mm.
come on, man, don't, please don't."
And because of this moment, because we get to see this happen, Elaine ends up helping Oscar because he knows exactly what she's going through. He knows her pain. He knows the sadness of this, and so he helps her get through this. And they end up going out to together, and getting the cannons. She instructs her men to take the cannons, and in a
Yeah,
very
because
cool moment,
previously the citizens had
yeah,
no
who
clue
could
about how
had
to
no idea how to do it, and she in a very cool bit of animation gets all her guards to line up, and she just puts her sword up in the air. No, she doesn't have a sword, just her hand. She just puts her hand up in the air, and just
yeah.
commences her men to just strike, strike, strike. It's so cool.
It's really cool to see the different screens and shots that Oscar had while she was while the cannons were firing. You've got side shots, you got undershots, you got overshots, you got front shots. Each one has a different level of brightness, different level of darkness, and each one has like different volumes, and that was so cool.
Mm.
The only downside, of course, is being it's only like a few seconds long, but
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
really cool to see.
Well,
And of
sadly,
course,
the people who she's firing at start to realize that she's the commander of this group and she's in charge of this, so they all aim at her. And
hmm
what's interesting about this is the shot where she dies. We see each bullet hit her and how it hits her. We see her shoulder go down, then we see her arm go down, her body go down. Each shot affects her fall, which I thought was an interesting shot, and it's quite sad. And then we even she doesn't quite die until episode 40. She ends up as brought back on sort of a sort of a trust thing. She's carried over, and the doctor takes a look at her, and she's just, yeah, she's beyond help. And we get kind of a and this is typical in a lot of cinema and film. We get the old sort of, well, in Fist of the North Star, if you've ever seen that show, they would use stars to indicate when someone was going to die. If a star falls, that's someone going. In this show, it's a white dove. If you see a white dove, that's, that's
Hmm.
the end. And in this show, Oscar sees the white dove fly by, and this is sort of signaling that, she's going to be dying soon. And Rosalie ends up cleaning up her face, and she ends up in her last sort of dying breath, commanding her group. And Elaine, in a very, he's sad, but he's also got so much respect for her that, he's that she's even willing to command even while she's, almost dying. He salutes her and walks off and gets her comrades to finish off the enemy, which
Yeah, it
ends
was a
up
pretty,
which ends up actually winning in the end for them as well.
yeah. So they do end up retaking taking the Bastille and winning that massive battle despite the losses. On that note, also when Oscar was dying, I can't remember if it was in episode 39 or episode 40, but there are like a multiple still shots of Oscar's life with
Mm.
even with Andre, like one after the other placed as Oscar was dying.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like a see your life before
Yeah.
your life flashing before your eyes moment,
Mm.
which I thought was really nice to look at.
Do you want that cannon freeze frame? That freeze frame of her like with the sword up in the air, like, you know,
Yes,
telling the
yes,
that's so such a cool freeze frame. I want
that
that.
is a cool freeze frame, and it's fantastic. Of course, I'm just also addressing the sad moment of
Mm.
Oscar's
Mm.
death and how she starts to remember some of the happiest moments of her life, and I guess that's what it was trying to do. Show the happiest moments and the moments that could never be, and then finally we have Oscar passing away from that.
Mm.
And yeah, it was a bit of it was a quite a sad episode,
Mm.
episode
Because
39,
we
because
also get basically the history of what happened afterwards. We get Marie Antoinette uh, going out
getting
and
executed.
talking to her citizens, and then her trying to flee the country, then Thurston trying to help them, this failing miserably, and then yeah, her the French people have no sympathy for her, and they kill her son, they kill her husband, and then they finally kill her.
Mm, it's yeah, she loses a lot of respect, but at the same time, and this is something you can hear on a podcast. Again, I apologize, I can't remember who the um who the podcast was by. Um, but the podcast describes in much greater, much more horrifying details what happened to Marie Antoinette in her final, from the moment she gets into house arrest all the way to her execution, from the kidnapping, from the taking of her children, to how her how the revolutionaries kind of propped up the severed heads of her former attendees
Mm.
and supporters, the jeers,
Yeah.
the insults that were thrown at her, even and this is true, and this is apparently true. Marie Antoinette's hair goes from blonde to white due to
Yeah.
the stress and the whole shock of the thing.
Mm.
Um, and it does, yeah, it's all a really, like, the anime episode 40 definitely sugarcoats the end for Marie Antoinette's,
Yeah.
and
So
what's really happened was pretty
let's
horrible.
get into the pros and cons, and that would be,
Mm.
we usually start with pros, but I'm just going to start with the cons because I have a lot less with these. That's my biggest con. Episode 40 is not a bad episode, but as far as episodes go, it feels a bit like it rushes through some things, and the way it's told is a little bit weird as well. Yeah, it's not the best episode in the show. It's not as bad as, from what I hear, there's a movie that apparently sums up every moment in the anime, and that's apparently pretty bad. But this to me wasn't as good as some of the other episodes. And I almost
Mm.
skipped it, but you do get the stuff with Marie Antoinette. And I have to point this out because this was stupid. The moment, I get that they're trying to show that Marie Antoinette's friends of Oscar and stuff, but the moment that definitely wouldn't have never happened in history, that was so dumb, was her like Rosalie being her attendant and telling her stories of Oscar, and that was, giving her the courage to live through those days and be happy. And it's like, oh, this is too cheesy even for this show, and it's stupid. So yeah, that was yeah. Um, and I want more of this. That's the other thing too, that I want to add. That's the other sort of bad. I like the show a lot, and yes, it is 40 episodes, but I would be 100% fine with like another season of the show, but it's Napoleon stuff. Yeah.
Mm.
I would love
The
to. You don't have to give me Andre and everybody else, but you could just give me Oscar in that time period. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. It would have been great to see more of that.
Mm.
Although my cons would be, I guess my major con was way back with Charlotte. I would have liked it if they provided a few more episodes with her. Would have been great to see. My other cons would be, let me see, what are other my other
More
cons?
Duke Orleans?
Um,
Come on, man.
oh yes, that's the
We need
one.
more
Thanks.
Duke Orleans.
Duke Orleans
He's
is like
our boy.
hardly in this. The other reason is because Duke Orleans was made to be such a great villain in the beginning, and then suddenly he just disappears or just made redundant afterwards. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, what was the point of him then? Like, why did you create him? Why was he there?
Yeah.
Did you just put him in and then forget about him?
Yeah.
Because I can't remember how involved he was in historical
I'm
sense,
I'm also
but it
gonna say
definitely would have been more than
I
this.
get that it's important to the story, but the episode that has kind of the assault scene is really difficult to watch. And I kind
Mm,
of wish it wasn't there. I get why it's there, but I kind of wish it wasn't there. So yeah,
yeah.
that's another con for me. And then
Do you
I
reckon do you reckon it would have been better to replace it with something like,
I would
how
have
do I
rather
put
even
this?
had him just slap her or something like that.
Yeah, like that physical contact instead
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like
yeah.
that kind of contact. Would you think that would have been a much better
Yeah,
scenario?
I just feel like the I mean I get it. It's an important moment and it has some gravity to stuff later on. And it does, but it makes their relationship a little bit weird when they finally do get together because it's like that guy pushed you on the bed and ripped your clothes off like without your without your consent. Which I know consent was very different back then, but still that's it was still, yeah. So that would be for me, and I would like to see more of the revolutionaries. I'd like to see more of Saint Just and Rossbury and all those guys because they get killed. Saint Just, the
Sadly, they
bloody
do.
assassin dude, gets killed. He gets his head chopped off because of bloody they voted. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, unfortunately,
Also, I don't know how much you. I mean, I've read a little bit about. They only briefly touch on it, but Fersen basically became a dictator when he went back to his own country,
more or
and
less,
I would have kind of
it's
liked to have seen that because he apparently gets murdered by his own people. Not like on the like he didn't get guillotined. I think
no,
he
he
like
got beaten to
yeah. The
death.
way I hear it, he got slaughtered, which is like brutal as hell, and I would like to see like that arc just to sort of see like that character being put in a different light and seeing like how extreme he would go and how extreme his people would go to get rid of him. I think is fascinating. So that's one thing I would have liked to have seen that wasn't there. But
Yeah, I think yeah, I mean it would be left up to
yeah.
your imagination over what happened to Furzin.
There's also a
Um
weird. We've touched on some animation stuff. The animation in this is better than the first season. I'll say that. I think you'll agree with me
oh,
on
by
that.
every leap.
But there is one weird head bobbing animation in episode 23 with the judge. That
Mm.
was kind of weird.
Yeah, I didn't actually notice that, so I'll take your word for it.
Yeah,
Um but yeah, I mean the animation itself is still a little bit weird due to due to how old it is, compared to what we might
it's
be
really
used to,
good for the
but
time though. You got to
it
admit,
was
and
fantastic. I
especially the
yeah.
second half is we have to admit the second half better animation, better art, better paced.
Hmm. It was definitely the best thing to watch. A good thing to watch, and Yeah, the voice actually, yeah, the music as well. I think we pretty much argued a lot on the music
I
in
think
the
the music's
first half.
yeah. I think you'll agree with me. The music is really good though in the second half.
Of course, I agree with you. I already knew the music was great and it's fantastic. And I really liked it.
Mm.
Yeah, I really did like yeah, how it actually blended in with the episodes, how it blended in with the stories, the scenes and what was happening
Mm.
in there.
Mm.
Whereas in the first half, the music most of the time didn't blend in.
Mm.
It was listening
It's a
to,
bit more poppy.
um, yeah, it was really, really poppy.
Yeah.
It's just so weird. I didn't really like it.
There's also no. I didn't notice any like massively recycled animation like I did in the first arc. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there was lots of recycled like walk cycles and horse cycles and sorry, just the word horse
Dancing
cycles.
cycles.
Yeah.
Dancing as well. That was so noticeable. It was
So,
just
oh
no.
yeah, the hair color thing that we noticed in one episode that didn't happen in this. But and yeah, the affair of the necklace is such a well paced arc, and the voice acting is great in that arc as well. It's just probably one of the best arcs in the show for me. And I know you probably like definitely one of the arcs in season two. There were definitely moments you enjoyed, eh?
Oh, there were so many. I really like the building tension and the conflicts between the people and the royal family towards the episodes. What did I put down? Oh yeah, episodes 32, 33 onwards, because
Mm.
it really ramped up the tension. It really showed how everyone felt towards each other, and it kind of did provide more of an explanation about what
Mm.
was wanted for the people.
So.
Um,
Mm.
and the royal family going like, nah, bye.
So let's get into our final thoughts. Eric,
Hmm.
did you like the show? Would you recommend the show? Would you watch it
I
again?
like the show. I'd recommend it. If you can get through the first part, then do so, because the second part is so much better. Okay, I'd recommend watching the first part mostly for understanding what's
Yeah,
actually
building
going
up the
on.
characters, getting to understand them.
Exactly, and
Yeah,
understanding how the
Dewberry's
courts
good as
worked.
well. We liked Dewberry, so we can.
Dewberry is the best villain.
She is best girl.
She's the best villain. Don't you argue with me on this one.
Yeah. So you'd watch this again. You'd recommend this to someone.
I would watch it. I definitely recommend it. Obviously, if especially if you have an interest in history and
Mm,
France, you definitely want to watch this
mm.
because it does put place a lot of things on point. Um, and I think some people would definitely enjoy that.
I think one thing I'm gonna have to ask because this is the first show I think Eric's ever seen from the '70s in terms of anime, like a full '70s anime. Am I right on that?
Not really. I have seen other shows like that, but I can't name
I
them.
mean the whole entire thing. Because I don't think
Oh,
from start to
um,
finish, I don't think you finished in a '70s anime.
probably not. No.
So what did you think going back and watching something from the '70s that's '70s '80s that all the way through?
It's pretty interesting. It is pretty interesting. The pacing is slightly slower. There's a lot more time taken, I think. Like maybe it's just with this one, but there's a lot more time taken when
Mm.
it comes to yeah,
Lot less fan
when it comes
service.
to yeah, a lot less fan service. Although shoujo elements do still apply to it. Yeah, there's a lot more time taken, and I think a little bit more care with some of this narrative on
Mm.
French history. So I really, really do like
Would
it. I do
would
really,
you
really like
want
it.
to watch another thing either by this group or by this author?
Yeah, I definitely would actually. It would be really interesting to see and maybe even make a comparison.
Mm. Mm.
To see, yeah, yeah, just how do I say this? Just kind of see
See
what,
what's different.
yeah, see what's different,
Okay.
basically.
So I of course really liked this show because I recommended it to Eric. I would say I had a whole different view of this show coming and reviewing it, not just watching it casually. I'd say this is a great show, but it's not an easy show to review. I'm just saying that for my
No, it
other
isn't.
fellow podcasters out there. I can understand why certain shows like Anime World Order that I listened to, that they've brought up this show, that I figured was going to review this, and that's why I never reviewed this, but they haven't, so we've bet them to it. But I could see now why they would do it. It's a lot of episodes and it's a lot of information to cover. It's a lot of we. What you might not know is we had to do a lot of research. We recorded this once before, and something happened with the recording, so we've had to record this again. So yeah, it was quite the task doing this episode, and this was of course our first ever time reviewing a 40 episode series. So we may do this in the future, but we'll see. It'll be a while. But Eric, I texted you, I think, the titles for next week. Do you want to have a go at reading what we're going to be reviewing for next week?
All right, give me a second. Because I managed to bring them up. I managed to, yeah. Let me have a
Yeah,
look.
Eric's
The
already got a
next
head
week's,
start. I haven't even started on what we're. I've briefly read some of what we're going to be reviewing next week. Our
yeah.
theme
So
is
the
going to be Yakuza, by the way,
Yeah.
and
So
it's a
the
lot
manga
lighter.
is Goku Shufudo, The Way of the House Husband,
Hmm.
and Shonan Junai Gumi as the anime. So I've already had a look at the manga because I read it previously. Did like it. It's a bit of a slapstick comedy.
Yeah,
And haven't watched the anime yet, but it looks really old.
yeah,
So I'll have a look at that, see how interesting that is. But that's pretty much
yeah.
our next week's
Our
episodes.
our next week is going to be fairly casual. This is a we will watch an episode of the basically it's Great Teacher Onizuka, the anime thing, but where it's the younger version of those guys, and we'll probably watch maybe 2 or 3 episodes. I think it's 5 episodes or something. But we're not doing 40 episodes obviously next week. It's going to be a lot more casual, back to what we usually do. 2 or 3 episodes of an anime, and then a couple chapters of a manga review. And this has been Alternating with Eric. We'll catch you guys next week.